Okay, so WWE Unreal has premiered on Netflix. This is the new series that's supposed to take us behind the scenes like never before and show us how something goes from the writer's room to being on television. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. It dropped on Netflix. Season 1 is 6 episodes, and each one's about an hour or so long. I did watch all 6, so I'll be giving you my thoughts on WWE Unreal. Now, the first thing I want to talk about real quick is the authenticity of this show. First thing you have to understand is that WWE has already done documentaries breaking kayfabe going all the way back to the early 2000s. I mean, it's nothing new. And WWE has often put together some really good biographies. The Eddie Guerrero documentary, the Brian Pillman documentary they did, back in the mid 2000s, the rise and fall of ECW. Like, WWE's put together some good things. But with this documentary, we were promised more. One thing you have to understand about these documentaries, because they're following the guys around, Triple H, Cody, capturing them in some very intimate moments in and outside the ring. And it's not just those two, it's a lot of people. Bianca, CM Punk, Rhea Ripley, John Cena. They all get sort of main event character or main character treatment depending on which episode we're talking about. But one thing I have to make clear is that even though, yes, we are seeing the writer's room and we are seeing them discussing ideas and things of that nature, this is an edited presentation, and it's also one where the cameras are on them and they know the cameras are on them. So think about this logically. If you're somebody who works in the entertainment business and you know the cameras are on you at all times, you're going to be on your best behavior. That's why reality shows that hide the camera usually end up showing a lot more negative than positive. For example, a lot of those Dateline shows, and not just the Predator series, but a lot of the other ones, hidden camera shows really kind of, when people don't know the camera's there, you see the real them. Whereas when the camera is there, they're going to give you a nice version of them. They're not going to lose their temper. They're going to, be fine. Usually. Obviously, there's exceptions, but usually when you know the camera's on you, you will be on your best behavior. And so, because of that, some of this stuff is a work. Like, even if it's just the person on camera doing the work, hiding their true feelings, you're not going to get someone on here complaining about Triple H or saying something bad about Nick Khan because it's being recorded. And if you say something bad about Nick Khan or Triple H and this documentary keeps it in, that could be your job, that could be your push. You know what I mean? Like, people are going to be on their best behavior. So, that being said, if you've seen other WWE presentations, there isn't much else here because it's very similar. Now, there are some new things, there are some new doors that get opened up. I mentioned the writer's room, which I don't think we see enough of. We usually see, there's a few clips here and there, but if you were to take all the clips of the writer's rooms and put them all together into like a compilation, it wouldn't be more than maybe 6 minutes. Like, it felt like it wasn't a lot. Usually when they were coming up with ideas, you saw some like pitches that were comedic in nature, but the real writers' rooms oftentimes have people pitching all kinds of crazy ideas, and they cut a lot of that out. And some of that stuff is what I think would be the most interesting stuff. They showed how the production works. They showed how the agents work the matches with the wrestlers. Then they talked to the production people, the directors, get it approved. They showed some of the agents here, Chris Park, a.k.a. Abyss, Petey Williams, Bobby Roode, a bunch of TNA guys were agents. Shane Helms, Hurricane Helms, is an agent, usually for the women's matches. He does a great job. They all do a great job at their job. They're all great at it from what we see. And we see Bruce Pritchard here as the producer of content. So, they are giving us a little bit more, but I don't think it's going to be the expose that I think people are looking for, especially since it's produced in part by WWE. You're not going to really get too much quote unquote drama. The closest drama we had where there was a disagreement was Chelsea Green disagreeing on the finish for her match at Saturday night's main event. That's literally it. Everything else sort of went according to plan, and they actually once again went over the Tribal Chief storyline, and with Rock and Cena and Cody and that whole thing. They showed some behind the scenes clips of that. Nick Khan talked about it, but it was nothing new if you've been paying attention. Like if you saw the Pat McAfee show, you know what their narrative is, you know what their idea is. Interestingly enough, one of the things I did not know was that, and it was pitched, I think by Brian Gewirtz. No, it was pitched to Brian Gewirtz that prior to Cena being the heel, that the idea was going to be that Kevin Owens was going to come in, that Rock was going to lay out Cody at the end of the show, bring in Kevin Owens, and they were going to have an impromptu match where Kevin Owens was going to pin Cody for the championship. And that I did not know. Nobody reported that, so that's very interesting. There were a few interesting tidbits here. There was a few things here and there. But the whole time I'm thinking in the back of my head, they know the camera's on them. They're going to save face. And I'm not saying I distrust all of these people, because I don't. It's just human nature. It's human nature to try to fit in to your environment and try to, if you know you're being watched, be on your best behavior. So, that's always in the back of my head when I see these things. That's why I think WWE's best work is biographies. So most of the stuff in the writer's room was a bit of a letdown. Like I said, there was a couple of pitched ideas that were for more comedic, like Chelsea Green being number 30 in the Rumble and winning after the last two before her, have like a double elimination. Everybody laughed. Like stuff like that. I want to see more like ideas that get left on the table, because that's what's interesting to me. And actually in this documentary, one of the things that I did like is that they went a bit deeper into the mind of Triple H. So that was interesting. And he talked about how, when you're coming up with a story, there's like 7 or 8 different ways it can go. And he calls it like an alternate timeline, like a multiverse, like Marvel. So in their head, they're thinking, okay, if they book this to happen, then this will happen. If they book that to happen, they can go here, they can go there. So they're always like thinking. And this is something that I think is a good thing to know, because it's true. Like this makes perfect sense. You're working on a creative story, whether it be a book, whether it be a movie, whether it be a wrestling show. And the decisions that you make are not going to just affect that one episode, even though sometimes if it's episodic and it's like an anthology series, that's different. But if it's an ongoing connected series, you have to remember that the decisions you make could affect later in the story. Not could, probably will. If you kill a character off in chapter 3, sure, you can maybe bring him back in chapter 12, but or is it going to mean anything? What will the execution be? Like, you have to think as far ahead as you can. And they talked about how they see WWE in like seasons. So like WrestleMania season, because this whole documentary started building, the first episode started building to the first net. I was going to say MSG, but that's not right. The first Netflix Raw. And so they're building towards that. And that's what the first episode highlighted. Then they went into the Rumble, the Chamber, and then WrestleMania. So kind of the build-ups to that. And they said that that's kind of their season. Like from December or from January to WrestleMania is like one season. Then you've got the summer build. And then presumably the fall build into the Rumble, which will go into Mania. So, that makes sense. It always made sense to me to do things like that. It's what Vince McMahon used to do when he was younger and a lot sharper. And now we've got Triple H, who's younger and sharper. And who's going to be the guy to replace him someday? Maybe we see him in this documentary. Ed Koskey's in this documentary. Some of the other writers are. I mentioned Bruce Pritchard. Michael Hayes is a treat on here. Seeing him just be Michael Hayes always puts a smile on my face, because Michael Hayes is Michael P.S. Hayes, purely sexy. And that's something else, too. They did some stuff where they, like, for example, they talked about the Charlotte Tiffany thing. And they showed, like, Triple H saying, well, how much of that was planned and how much wasn't. And then the divorce stuff really bothered Charlotte. And then Triple H was basically like, tell Tiffany she has to apologize, and we don't do that here. Which is interesting considering some of the things that he said throughout the years. But okay. Hey, all right. He has changed. I'm not that kind of guy. The last thing you're going to get from me is someone who's going to, like, hold on to things. In this documentary, they even talked about Triple H and Punk, and how when they had their first conversation in 10 years, they both could feel the other person had changed. And I am 100% about forgiveness and repentance. I am 100% about giving people a second chance. And not demeaning them or demonizing them for the rest of their life like cancel culture loves to do. Cancel culture is probably the worst thing to ever come out of, like, internet discourse. You know what I'm saying? And it's like it doesn't remember that people are all going to make mistakes, and that they can come back from their mistakes and do better and learn. They just want to shut you down forever. So, but putting that aside, there were some interesting things that they had talked about. But overall, I didn't learn anything that was all that new. They showed Triple H doing the, what do you call it? He was like basically doing the play-by-play to the production team about the Cena heel turn. The Rock called himself... The Rock stated in this documentary, and he only had a couple of statements, and I think they were from last year. I don't think they were recorded for this, where The Rock said that the final boss is the greatest villain, the greatest heel in the history of the business. Man, this guy, the more I see him, the more I want him to go away. And I would have never thought that about Dwayne, man. I would have never thought that. It's just, damn, man. So, it was fine for what it was. If you're intrigued in this, if you're intrigued in the behind the scenes, if you don't know anything about the behind the scenes, right? If you've never seen like a WWE documentary and you've never been schooled on how it works, how the wrestling business works for the most part, they don't go into like how moves are done, right? There's still stuff they don't go into. Like there's other documentaries that show you how to do that. But if it's, if you're looking to see how things go from the mind of Triple H and Paul Heyman and the rest of the writers to the ring, through the production, it goes from the writers to the agents, production, and then to the wrestlers, and then to the audience. You'll get a crash course with this. But if you're a long-time wrestling fan, you've studied the business, you've read up on the business, you kind of know how the business works, or you've worked in TV production before, I think a lot of this stuff you probably already know. And they did this thing, I was going to mention it earlier, where they show like Charlotte. She's like, my name is Charlotte Flair, and my parents call me Tipsy or Tippy. Or Tippy? I think it was Tippy. And then she's like, but my real name is Ashley Fleer. And so they all introduced themselves like as their wrestling name, then as their real name. And talked about, and so that was supposed to be somewhat candid, even though it really isn't, because everybody knows the real names by now. Again, this documentary, had this come out 20 years ago, then it would have been groundbreaking. Had this come out 30 years ago, people would have been wanting to hang Vince McMahon or whoever approved it. Because 30 years ago and beyond, there is no way this would ever get made. Even a controlled documentary like this where people know they're being filmed, that is a no-no 30 years ago. But again, 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, now I guess for the Netflix audience it's new to them, so enjoy it. But for somebody who kind of understands the business, I had fun with it. It wasn't like I was bored or anything. It was just, they did not go. What I'm interested in seeing, because they're supposed to be doing more episodes next year, and I don't know what they're gonna do, but I would like to hear from Cody after the John Cena match, how he felt about it, for real. But again, the key word is for real. And even if Cody in his own head hated the match, right? Let's say he told his wife privately that he hated the match. He's going to tell the cameras he loved it because he has way too much respect for Triple H and for John Cena to in any way impugn what they do. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. It goes back to what I said earlier, man. When you know you're being filmed, you're going to be a bit more aware of what you say. So that's it. Those are my thoughts on WWE Unreal. Let me know in the comments what you thought about the documentary. I will say this. The most shocking thing that I saw on there, as weird as it may sound, was CM Punk crying on Triple H's shoulder, saying, "I don't get here without you." That really, really shocked me. That really shocked me. I never thought I'd see that. Even though, of course, Punk's been back with the company for a couple years now, I never would have thought I'd see that. So there you go. Anyways, take care.